Aloha, this is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our full moon. We are going to be blessed with the moon directly across from the sun on Sunday night. Here in Hawaii, it's going to be 11:17 p.m. Pacific time, it's going to be in the early hours of the 27th. So at it's actually 1:16 a.m. and 11:16 p.m. here in Hawaii. So this is happening in a star called Rohini, which is the very center of Taurus. Rohini is sometimes translated as the red one or the growing one. She is the part of Taurus where we are really immersed in pleasure, in desire, in our fertility and our capacity to grow things. So when we look at this earthy sign and we think about, growing things in the earth, we think about making food, we think about our sensual pleasures, our bodily desires, our bodily needs. But beyond just our needs, how can we really enjoy and relish on our path of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our bodies? The moon herself is exalted in Taurus. And the reason is because we are more grounded. We are more likely to take care of ourselves. And the more we care for ourselves in these precious ways every day, the more we are grounded and calm and centered, and we don't ride the highs and lows. Anyone who, maybe has low blood sugar or just knows what it feels like to be really hungry, if you're a Taurus person, then you probably don't last too long in that state. But you can see people's behavior change. I can see it in children. I can see it in adults alike, where they start to get really crabby. They start to get really irritable. And their literally capacity to control the emotions goes down. So this is really why our moon is exalted here, because we have that ability and that desire to take care of ourselves and our physical selves, so that we're not, we're not hyper focused on our emotional state, which is what happens across the way where the moon is debilitated in Scorpio. So our full moon is, always across from the sun. And so it's reflecting back that energy of Scorpio. We have this sort of tumultuous place in the sky where we have to face our shadows, and we have to face that we can't control people, and that anyone we love might leave us or might, die. And we have to, reckon with that very real reality. And it's scary. And it's sometimes so scary that we lash out at others. And in our attempt to control our own pain and our own experience, we, can hurt people that we care about, or we can accuse people we care about of things. We can be in a very projection state where we're taking our fear and we're taking our anger and we're putting it onto the other person. And this is the cycle we're in right now. This is the cycle that actually just began. It really only began on the 16th. And it's important to notice that full moons are the apex of the month. They're the time when we're reflecting back upon the way we've been since the sun moves into a sign. So it's not always clean, right? The new moon isn't always first in a cycle. Sometimes the full moon happens in that axis before the new moon does. But it's an important thing to look at, like what are the ways in which I've been avoiding my self-care in order to attach to my emotional state? Where are the places I've been hiding in the shadows when I need to be above ground, tending my flowers, tending my gardens? And where are the ways when I've been so obsessed with everybody else's place in my life that I'm not being true to my own heart's desires, and I'm not able to just access that place within myself that knows what I want? Because above all, Rohini is the maiden. She is the youngest of the 27 nakshatras and the most beautiful, the most desired by both her husband, the moon traveling through the nakshatras, which are the sister wives, and by her father. And the eldest, Jaista, across the way, is the one who gets angry about the fact that the moon wants to spend every night with Rohini. and she speaks out about it, and she has her father bring consequences. In the story, actually, one of the stories of how the moon waxes and wanes, Daksha, the father of these nakshatras, tells the moon, Soma, you, or Chandra is the overlord name, if you don't spend the night with each of my daughters, then you're going to waste away. And Chandra tries, but he can't get enough of Rohini because she's so fully embodied in her desire nature. She's not thinking about how other people view her. She's not trying to be sensuous. She's not trying to elicit feelings of fondness from others. She's just completely dove into her own experience. And as a result, she's magnetic, right? The attraction is insane because she's so in her truth, and in the truth of what feels good to her. And she can be playful, she can be fun, she can be angry, she can be anything, but it's all very true. It's not based on other people's perceptions or other people's agendas or trying to control how other people will view her, or if people will accept her into their circle or into their lives. And so this is something we can all reflect upon in our lives. Right? When are we the most lit up? When are we being truly ourselves? That's when we're magnetic. When we are kind of thinking about the consequences or thinking about how something's going to work, and we're kind of in this controlling state, that's not as attractive, right? And it's not just not attractive to other people, it's not as attractive to life. Life breeds off of being alive. And that's why we're so attracted to children, and why we're so attracted to animals, because they're always themselves, right? They're never trying to impress or please people with their agenda, right? I mean, to some degree, children and pets do learn to please the people who feed them and take care of them. But there's a being in the moment that is just alive, and life grants more life when we're embracing that. So Jaisa is very upset that Chandra won't go to visit all the different sisters fairly. So she tells her father again, he's not listening. He's still staying with Rohini every night. And Daksha then curses him to wane. And he wanes and wanes and wanes to the point where there's no light. And, the crops aren't growing because there's, the cycles of the moon are not in sync anymore. And everybody, all the sisters are also really upset because they don't want their husband to die. So they tell Daksha, please amend the curse. And he amends it so that the moon waxes for half the month and wanes for the other half of the month. There's one of many tales around the waxing and waning of the moon. But in essence, what happens is that he's forced to fairly share his time with each of the sisters. He's not allowed to stay 100% in that desire nature. And that's really true for us too, right? We can't just constantly be in a state of play and be lit up all the time, because there's responsibilities we have to take care of. There's, if we have children, we have to take care of them. If we have a career, we have to go to that. We have bills to pay. We have repairs that need to be done on our homes and our cars and everywhere else. And so there's upkeep to our life. And that requires us to step into our non-desire nature as well. So I'm going to share my screen so we can look at the chart here. We have our moon here in Rohini, and it's across from Mars, which is still very combust the sun. So both Mars and the sun are really powerful in Scorpio. There's a lot of courage and discipline and capacity to act where Mars is. So in the sign of Scorpio, this is like inner action. This is the inner warrior going down deep and being willing to face our own shadows. Sometimes it can look like putting that anger on others, though, right? We can sometimes try to fight our own battles by fighting them outside of ourselves with our partners or with our loved ones. So we have to be really mindful of that. And the sun is also very powerful in Scorpio. This is where we're able to stand in our power, in our shadow nature. We're able to shine light on all the places that we think are so dark. And in illuminating them, we find that they're not actually as big or as scary as we thought, right? Maybe we see a scorpion and it's terrifying to think about the sting and, how much it'll hurt us, and that bug might hurt us, but ultimately we can step on it, right? It's quite small. So this is the nature of the sun being in Scorpio, recognizing how many of the dragons we're looking at that are really just small bugs. Across the way, though, from our moon, it's giving us that reflection, right? It's not just going to be all roses and honey in Rohini. There's going to be this element of anger, sort of wrestling with ourselves, wrestling with our own emotional state, and really trying to have the courage to put that finger on ourselves instead of on other people, which might not be easy, especially coming out of all those planets in Libra that we've had over the last month. Our relational issues have been so at the forefront, and we've probably compromised a lot. And we've probably maybe even been pushy about other people compromising. We've willed a lot in our relationships. And whenever we are forcing something uphill instead of surrendering and allowing it to come with the flow, the natural universal flow, we end up having some results that aren't exactly what we wanted, right? We wanted that thing so bad, but the truth is that when we get it, we're less than excited about it because we willed it so much of the way that it didn't happen in that organic way where it can truly integrate with our life and with our being. So this is one of the things that might be coming up right now. And Anuradha, the star that Mars and the sun is in, is after Radha. It's the star of devotion. And it's really showing us the path of laying ourselves down in front of life force, spirit, source, God, whatever you want to refer to it, goddess, however you want to refer to it, that part of us that is able to completely trust in something bigger than ourselves, in that energy that runs through everything that's alive, and know that no matter what choices we make and what we really want to manifest in our life, that the flow is going to kind of bring us back into its rhythms, regardless of what we try to will our way through. And so if we can learn to surrender more and listen more and really pay attention to the way that we're being guided, we might have a lot less stress. We might have a lot less struggles, a lot fewer inner battles to fight, and definitely a lot fewer outer battles to fight. So this is one of the themes we're looking at right now, is how can we lay down our need to constantly make things the way we want them to be? And in what ways can we fully embody our desire and just enjoy the life that we have in front of us already? Even beyond what we want in the future, there is what we have now that we've already manifested, that we've already brought in front of us, and we can fully dive into that. And that is sending a message that we want more of that, right? That we want more of that love and more of that life to the universe. Now, of course, the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and Venus is still at the end of Virgo, where she's debilitated. So we have this, perhaps a bit nitpicky relationship with happiness, with joy, and with our relations with others. Like, we want it to be this perfect way. We want it to be neat. If we planned it this way, and it's not working out the way we wanted to. So again, we go back to the surrender. How can we let go of all of our attachments to how something's supposed to look, to even our attachment to how we're supposed to look, right? It's not just the young maiden that makes Rohini so attractive. It's the fact that she's living in her vibration of truth, which is desire. We all desire things, and we're not bad for desiring things. And we're not bad for wanting things we don't have. But the more we spend in that space of lack of what we don't yet have, as opposed to enjoying what we do have and what's already around us, the more we are moving farther away from feeling fully loved and feeling fully alive. We also have Saturn giving some pretty strong drishtis here. We have the one-way drishti on Jupiter that's been running for quite some time now, really on Rahu Jupiter, where we're forced to know that there's things going on, particularly in the world outside of our little personal bubbles, that are depressing and difficult and problematic, and that we can't just ignore that. And that a lot of our righteous beliefs, our self-righteousness, and the things that we stand up on podiums to preach about are coming from some deeper awareness we have of something that's not quite right. And it has to do with the little people and the kings and companies and, people who hold the power, and the need for us to make that right somehow. So it's kind of festering underneath the surface a little, this like cold, dispassionate stare of just awareness on the fact that we need to commit to a better future. And that's putting energy on, specifically on our beliefs and the fieriness of our beliefs. Saturn's also giving a 10th house drishti to this Mars and Sun, and it's very close to Mars. Saturn and Mars can be pretty tumultuous when they come together, because Saturn really represents our fear and Mars really represents our anger. But when we have Saturn in his own sign and Mars in his own sign, there's a lot of power to be had here, because the fear is coming from something very legitimate, and the courage and even anger that can be coming with Mars is fighting hopefully a good battle, right? One where we're trying to tackle the shadows. We're trying to tackle, sure, the secrets in the world, the things that are going unsaid. So not just our own personal shadows, but the collective shadows we carry. We're trying to battle the things that have mutated in the dark to become horrific and need to come up and out in order to be reintegrated, recycled in a different way. And Saturn's reminding us that, but also, kind of placing those limitations as he does, reminding us there's limitations on everything. And sometimes that can really get in the way of us making big, courageous, bold leaps, because we're limited by something very practical and real. And we need both, right? We need that courage. We need that fire to take big, bold leaps. And we also need to be able to be practical and reasonable and aware of what really is and what's really happening. Mercury has just shifted into Sagittarius, so our communication might be more aligned with the Saturn-Jupiter aspect, where we're preaching our beliefs, but yet we have to be aware that much of what we believe is always coming from the shadows. It's always coming from our own fears, our own experiences, our own wounds. And it's not just a clean belief, right? It came from somewhere. And so we might find ourselves, speaking very strongly with one opinion or another, and not necessarily recognizing that we just hold the pieces we hold, and that everybody has their very human and very real experience. And we're not here to bypass that. That's not the path to realization. But there is a way of elevating the conversation that allows people to kind of climb out of whatever hole or ditch they're in, and meet on this plane where things can be spoken of and talked about in a way where there's promise, where there's hope, where there's enthusiasm, and there's inspiration for something to be better. So this is something I hope we can kind of work with these energies in a way where we're really meeting them at their highest. There's always going to be the potential to sink down into the lower vibrations, and it's all going to kind of really depend on our own charts, our own way of interacting with the world. How grounded you already are emotionally, how much of a warrior you already are you, do you have a lot of trouble with Mars energy? People who struggle with Mars energy tend to be the ones who take the passive aggressive approach or blame others. If we're not able to integrate that part of us that's angry, it's going to be hard for us to fight the good fights, because there is stuff to be angry about within our own personal life and within the world around us. Mars is also giving a return drishti. So this is kind of interesting. Mars makes 4th house and 8th house drishtis one way. The outer planets all have like a one-way drishti. And Mars is giving one back to Saturn, 4th house, and Saturn's giving his 10th house to Mars. And so that it's an exchange of drishti from their own signs, which is kind of powerful. Mars is also giving courage to that part of us that might be afraid to create the future we want to create, and reminding us that all change is uncomfortable. All transformation is going to feel, a little agitated to begin with. We can't just smoothly expect to overhaul major patterns, beliefs, habits, traumas. We can't just expect that to happen. There has to be room for it to be a little bouncy. And that, every step, every time we show up for something, because the nature of discipline is to show up again and again. And the more we show up for something, the more it's going to just flow, right? The first time I ever spoke on a video, I probably took 15 takes and none of them worked really. And I finally just had to use one. And now I don't really take any takes. I just speak. And if there's mistakes, I work with it because I've done it enough times. So it requires constantly showing up again and again for something to become really good at it. And more than even to become good at it, to overcome your fear of doing it, right? And you'll still have fear every time, perhaps, but we need to take those action steps towards things we really want to commit to in the future for ourselves, for our world, for our work, for our families, for our communities, but also for the greater community, the greater society, which is really what Aquarius is always reminding us of. So this should be a really powerful full moon in many ways for us, because it's an opportunity to kind of settle down for a moment. The moon is always in a state of more engagement with others and more optimism when it's full than when it's new. New is the waning energy, the dying energy, the energy that we are merging our consciousness with our mind and our emotions. And so to have both the full moon quality of optimism with the Taurus quality of being exalted because of how much more stable and calm we're able to be is going to really offer us a lot more peace right now. And especially in the midst of so much chaos that we've been experiencing, it's nice to have some respite. Yeah. If you would like to know where this full moon is lighting up your life, I do forecasts for all 12 signs, and I have those for my Patreon group, Cosmically Aligned. You can see what area of your life you've been kind of focusing on in the Scorpio season, and also how it's reflected by this full moon. What are you being shown? Because it's always the opposite, right? The new moon and the full moon are always across from each other, and it's an axis. And it's not just a sign axis that has opposite qualities, it's a house axis that has opposite qualities. So maybe one is your home and one is your career, one is yourself and one is others. This is an important thing to understand, because it's a lot more than just what the sign has to say. It's somewhere in your life that's actually being activated, and it's happening every new moon and every full moon and every transit we have. Also, my Cosmically Aligned group, I just did a huge discussion on Rahu and Ketu changing signs for all of the 12 rising signs. So Rahu's moving into Pisces, Ketu's moving into Virgo on the 28th, so just a day or two after this full moon. And it's going to really shift your trajectory for the next year and a half, what you're focused on, what you're fixated on really, and where you're actively avoiding, what you're trying to not pay attention to in your life. So this is all going to be a part of or is already a part of my Cosmically Aligned group. You can just go in right now, have a week free trial, and access all of this stuff that's personal for your sign. And if you're on my email list, you'll also receive Rahu and Pisces, Ketu and Virgo for all 12 signs as like a written PDF. Shorter description than what I did in the discussion, but it's a gift to all my subscribers who've always been there for me over the years. And I've always done these long transit reports for each of the 12 signs. So I look forward to seeing you soon. If you need to dive a little deeper into your own chart, you can reach out and we can book a reading. And I appreciate any likes and shares and comments. That really helps me to build my growth. So if you appreciate what I do, you can offer that with some comments or shares. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Namaste. Happy full moon.